In this video, you will see what is the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 8. Every units in this video are all obtainable. I do want to know, what do you think is the best unit in Anime Vanguards Update 8? Remember to subscribe and like, and with that being said, in no particular order, the first must-have unit is the Struggler Rampage. Guts is one of the newest secret unit and he became one of the most overpowered unit in Anime Vanguards Update 8. The Struggler Rampage stats a max upgrade and max level are 401,000 damage with his SP at 7.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 55,810. On placement, Guts has an ability called Berserker Armor. When the ability is toggled on, Guts will attack non-stop and gain full status effect and debuff immunity, although once reached 20 injury stacks, he will be stunned for a minute. Although with his passive, it lets him apply bleed for 20% of his damage for 10 seconds while stunned. Alright, next unit is Escanor Pride. Escanor is still one of the best Vanguard unit with his passive and abilities. Escanor Pride stats a max upgrade and max buff and max level are 1.19 million damage with his SP at 7.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 166,855, which is insanely meta. Escanor's first ability, Lion Sin, when activated, Escanor will deal 400% damage to every enemy in range and can only be used once per match per player. Escanor's second ability, Ultimate, when activated, he sets himself to 12-hour stack and gain 50% damage and can no longer lose hour stacks, although after 5 waves, this unit sells itself but can be placed again. Escanor's first passive, the one above all, once the pre-match screen, the player can select to burn unit slots for every slot that is burned or empty team slot permanently gain 1 hour stack. If all slots are burned or you have no other units equipped, this unit will upgrade itself every wave and becomes free to place. His second passive, High Noon, for every wave that passes, this unit gains 1 hour stack. For every hour stack, this unit gains 15% damage and 1.5% range, while at 12 stacks, this unit gains 30% more damage and all enemies in range get inflicted with burn for 2% of this unit's damage by 5 seconds. Once hitting 12 stacks, every wave lower stack count by 1. His last passive, Sunshine, attacks inflict burn for 30% of this unit's damage for 5 seconds. If an enemy leaves this unit's range, this unit will inflict that enemy with burn for 100% of this unit's damage for 5 seconds. Anytime this unit inflicts burn on an enemy, cleanses all debuffs and status effects from itself. Wow! Alright, next one is Leo Fangs. Leo is one of the best secret with her passives and ability. Leo Fangs stats a max upgrade and max level are 90,000 damage with her SPA at 9 seconds, making her damage per second at 10,045. Leo gets an ability on placement which is Hellfire Incinerate. When activated, gain 1% damage buff per second while an enemy is in range. Every attack in this form reduces range by 2%. This debuff cannot be cleansed. Stab buffs and debuffs revert once ability is turned off. Leo's first passive, Grand Fire Mage, attacks inflict burn for 20% of this unit's damage stat for 5 seconds. Anytime this unit applies burn to an enemy it already stacked, the percentage of the burn applies increases by 5%. Leo's second passive, Show Me Your Full Power, for every burning enemy in range, increase range by 0.5% up to 20%. When attacking a burning enemy, does 20% more damage. Okay, next one is Super Vegito. Vegito is one of the strongest unit with his passive and stats at later upgrades. Super Vegito stats at max upgrade and max level are 234,570 damage with his SP at 3.9 seconds, making his damage per second at 60,668, which is insanely overpowered. Vegito's first passive, the Strongest Fusion, on entry gains 100% more damage for 40 seconds, and once 40 seconds have lapsed, gain 20% more damage, decreases his SPA by 20% and increases range by 20%, and attack ignore enemy dodge chance. His second passive, Alright, if an enemy would attack an ally, it attacks this unit instead. Anytime this unit is attacked, increase range by 3% up to 30%. His attacks also inflict Rupture, which permanently removes regen, making him great against regeneration enemies. His third passive, Enough, attacks will ignore 50% of enemy damage reduction. Anytime an enemy attacks or applies a status effect on this unit, he will perform a counterattack on that enemy. Alright, next unit is the Falcon. Griffith is one of the strongest secret units, especially he has 2 forms that has its own benefits in this new Anime Vanguards Update 8. The Falcon of the Darkness stats a max upgrade and max level are 60,640 damage with its SP at 6.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 9,900. Griffith Darkness' first passive is Aspect of Reality. This unit attack inflict repulse, which knock back enemies. If this unit attacks an enemy on repulse lockout, they deal 30% more damage to that enemy and inflict slow for 30% for 10 seconds. This unit does not damage and cannot repulse demons spawned in by his ability. Its second passive, Despicable Evil. For every allied tower branded, increases damage by 5% and range by 1%. Its third passive, Ethereal Body. This unit ignores 30% damage reduction. When attacking a slowed enemy, this amount is increased to 50%. Its second form, the Falcon of Light. His stats at max upgrade and max level are 63,670 damage with its SP at 6.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 10,395. He gets 3 new passive. His fourth passive is Commander. Summons in the Immortal to fight for him. The Immortal will do random attack 1, 2, 3. Upgrades itself to max upon arriving and gain 2% damage per thing sacrificed up to 100%. His fifth passive, the White Falcon, buffs all allies in range by 40% damage, debuffs any units that were branded by 20% damage. For every branded ally or enemy spawns in one demon from his ability every 30 seconds, demons spawned in this way gives 100 yen on death. His sixth passive, Fantasia, lowers the damage reduction of all enemies in range by 20%, brands applicable allied towers when placed and enemies when spawned. Okay, next in is Monkey King Awakened. Jinmori is one of the best with his unique passive and ability. Monkey King Awakened stats a max upgrade and max level are 80,960 damage with his SP at 5.9 seconds, making his damage per second at 13,658, which is insanely meta. Jinmori gets an ability at max upgrade called Monkey King's Fu. This unit can choose to place a clone of itself anywhere on the map. This clone starts at upgrade 0 and clone cannot be sold. When this unit is and costs 50% less than the original or the last clone place. Jinmori's first passive, the Power of All Races. For anything that requires a group or category, this unit is counted as the group or category, gains 10% damage buff for each different group on your team. His second passive, Monkey Clones. For every clones created, this unit gains 50% damage and 5% more range. Anytime this unit is sold, all clones gain any buffs this unit had for X amount of seconds, and this unit cannot be sold again. His third passive, Soul Strike. This unit ignores 80% of damage reduction for every percentage of the damage reduction an enemy has. This unit amplifies its damage by that amount. Alright, next unit is Lord of Shadows. Sid is one of the strongest secret with his passive and ability. Lord of Shadows stats at max upgrade and max level and max buff are 57,650 damage with his SP at 7.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 8,133. Lord of Shadows' first passive, Dramatic Entry. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 12.5%. Once gauge is filled up, this unit can then press the unlock active ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damages all enemies in range by 150% of this unit's damage and buffs range by 30% for 30 seconds. His second passive, Lord of Shadows. Whenever this unit gets a takedown on an enemy, gains 0.5% damage up to 100% and more range by 0.25% up to 50%. And this buff are lost on swap. His last passive, Overpower. This unit is immune to debuffs. Increased damage dealt to the enemy based on the percentage of their missing HP. Lord of Shadows at later upgrades gets an ability, All Range Atomic. When activating, it will deal 50% times of the amount swaps of this unit has done in damages to all enemies in range, which resets on use. This has a global cooldown of 180 seconds. Okay, next unit is Yuho Almighty. Yuho is one of the strongest unit with his passive as he becomes fully Yui at later upgrades. Yuho Almighty stats at max upgrade and max level are 28,120 damage with his SP at 9.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,056. Yuho Almighty has 3 passives. His first passive, the Almighty. The Almighty, immune to all status ailments, increases his damage by 5% for every status ailment avoided up to 30%. His second passive, the Man Who Saw the Future. When this unit attacks, it will do an additional attack on the last enemy in range at the same time. This will only apply if the first and the last enemy are different. His third passive, Ash Fallen, gains an active ability which increases his range by 5% every time Ash Fallen is used up to 20%. When activating the ability, it switches between 2 toggles. Toggle 1 buffs all units in range by 15% and damage and lose 30% attack from this unit. Although his toggle 2 will debuff all allied units in his range by 20% damage and 10% range, and gain 10% damage and 5% range per allied unit who is debuffed from this ability. How to get Yuho is from the Rift, where he has a 2% chance to get, so good luck on who is grinding this unit. Yippee! Alright, next unit is Sunjin Wu and Igris. Sunjin Wu is still one of the best Vanguard unit with his crazy passive, summons, and nukes. Sunjin Wu and Igris stats a max upgrade and max level are 232,630 damage with its SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 36,303, which is insanely overpowered. Sunjin Wu and Igris have 3 passives. His first passive, the army supply. This unit has a mana bar. Anytime this unit spawns a summon, this unit will lose 40% of its total mana, and anytime an enemy is defeated, this unit gains 2% of their total mana, and anytime a mana is lost, his damage will be buffed by 0.5% up to 30%. His second passive, the General. Anytime an allied summon dies in this unit's range, increases his damage by 5% up to 50%. This increase is reset after this unit's attack. If none of this unit's summons are on the track, this unit will gain 20% more range and 30% more damage. His third passive, the Monarch. This unit summons gain additional health based on the percentage of mana remaining after their summoning. Between upgrades, Sunjin will be able to nuke enemies with his 3 abilities, although it is only one time use per game, which you will have to use wisely. And between upgrades, Sunjin Wu, you will be able to manually summon 4 different summons, which are all insanely overpowered, and you can summon them again when they are dead. Okay, next unit is the Smith. The Smith is one of the best support, as he will increase a unit's damage by 25% or range by 20% or reduce their SPA by 10%. At max upgrade, you can activate Masterworks, which only one of each Masterwork can exist at a time. First one is Dragon Slayer, increase damage by 40% and increase damage dealt by DOTs by 20%. Second one is Salamander Dagger, increase range by 20% and increase damage dealt to burning enemy by 20%. Third one is Dragon's Great Shield, makes ally immune to status effects. Fourth one is Sword of Actuation, reduces SPA by 10% and increase damage by 20%. Wow. Alright, next one is Kuru Unsealed. Kaguya is one of the strongest Vanguard unit you can obtain through the spring event banner. Kuru Unsealed stats a max upgrade and max level are 257,120 damage with her SP at 6.4 seconds, making her damage per second at 40,324. Koguru's first passive, Master of Dimensions. When this unit activates a new dimension, increase her damage by 20% and range by 10%. Koguru's second passive, God of Shinobi. If an ally in range has a meter, this unit attacks restore that meter by 2% per attack. On attack, Kogura teleports to the nearest applicable location of the attack. This is disabled when a dimension is active. When a dimension is activated, the attack the first enemy and move to them regardless of their spot on that map. Koguro's third passive, Elemental Affinity. This unit is counted as each element currently on the team. When this unit swaps to its dimension, it matches an element already applied to this unit, and Kaguya will gain 50% more damage for the duration of the domain. Kaguya's first ability, Elemental Dimensions, which you can swap her element between fire, ice, and sand. Kaguya's second ability, Beast Explosion. When activated, it will deal 1000% damage to every enemy and can only be used once per match per player. Okay, next unit is Eizen Aura. Eizen is still one of the best secret, with him being immune to all status ailments as he becomes full AoE and gets an ability at later upgrades. Eizen Aura stats at max upgrade and max level are 52,390 damage with his SP at 10 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,226, which is insanely good, especially if he becomes full AoE at later upgrades. Eizen Aura's first passive Aura, he will be immune to all status ailments. Every enemy within 40% of this unit's range takes DOT damage, scaling from 1% to 80% of this unit's damage based on how close they are to this unit. His second passive, Complete Hypnosis. Anytime a health stock is removed, forces every enemy on the map to walk backwards for 5 seconds and lessens his SPA by 5% per health stock missing. His third passive, Dabo Mystery, gains active Dabo 81. Every enemy stopped by Dabo 81 increases the damage conversion of Aura by an additional of 2% for the duration of the ability. Alright, next one is Yamamoto Captain. Yamamoto is one of the strongest summoners with his frequent summons, and he inflict burn to enemies. Yamamoto Captain stats at max upgrade and max LR, 30,760 damage with his SP at 10.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 3008, which is insanely overpowered, especially he becomes fully weak at later upgrades. Yamamoto Captain's first passive, Head Captain, attacks will inflict burn for 25% damage, and his damage will increase by 10% and lessens his SPA by 2% for every burning enemy in this unit's range, up to 30%. His second passive, South, every enemy this unit kills gets revived as a skeleton, with its health being 40% of this unit's attack, making Monarch the best trait as he will scale with traits. His third passive, Release, gains an ability where any enemy that walks into this unit's range will be inflicted with burn every 15 seconds, and it will increase the damage of the burn applied to the same enemy by this unit by 1% every time it is applied. When activating North, all skeletons summoned on the map will stop moving, and it is a global cooldown. Okay, next one is Smith John. Sid is still one of the best with his passive and nuke abilities. Smith John stats at max upgrade and max LR, 24,020 damage with his SP at 4.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,422. Smith John's first passive, Dramatic Entry. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 12.5%. Once this gauge is filled, this unit can then press the unlock active ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damage all enemies in range for 80% of this unit's damage and buffs damage by 40% for 30 seconds. Its second passive, Undercover Agent, gains the unknown element on attack. If this unit has already attacked that enemy, it increases the damage of that attack by 5%, and it stacks, which is insanely meta against bosses. His last passive, A Welcome Challenge. If the enemy has more health than this unit's damage, this unit will deal 40% more damage. Finally, the last unit is the Witch Disciple. The Witch is one of the newest mythical support banner unit, and she became one of the best support in this new anime Vanguards Update 8. The Witch Disciple stats at max upgrade and max LR, 25,860 damage with her SP at 9.1 seconds, making her damage per second at 2,847. The Witch Disciple first passive, Witch of the Elements. This unit is always treated as a positive element in any game mode that is buffing elements. Her second passive, Astral Assistance, attacks inflict nullify for 10 seconds on hit. If an ally is stunned, boost their damage by 50% for the duration of the stun. That was everything for this video on the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 8. I hope this video helped you in some sort of way. Remember to subscribe and like, and I will see you in my next one. Bye bye!